What is up, everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at this Miike Nguyen custom Ghostblade. This knife comes to us on loan from Russell, aka That's Not a Knife, on Instagram, and I am super stoked to jump into this one with you guys. So you can see here, I have a fresh microfiber cloth. We're going to bust this thing out. And we're going to clean up some of this black Damascus, this beautiful Sanmai blade. We're going to take a nice close look at this sucker, because this is one heck of a knife. But it's not perfect. So let's take a look. Yeah, that shines up real nice. Ooh, boy. Ooh, boy. So you can see here that we are looking at a nice, reflective, high polish along this Damascus scale. Black Damascus, got some zirconium sprinkled all through there, as well as some milling. So you can see from this angle, we have some fluting here, some cutouts throughout the knife as well, giving you an interesting different coloration to look at. We do have a 5-spoke custom machine pivot with a machined finish. You can see these gorgeous scales are slightly shadow boxed over the plain titanium frame. As we look at the backspacer here, we can see this gorgeous Sanmai semi-length backspacer with the alternate pattern dimples. This is a type of design that I really enjoy on knives and other products when they have sort of the dimpling effect. We're looking at that Sanmai pocket clip. Pretty slim, pretty low ramp, pretty strong clip there. Not the most daily carry friendly clip ever right here, but still very pretty. We are looking at a huge Sanmai blade. Look at that core. Oh man. You can see that nice edge. Looks like the knife's probably been sharpened. So we have a bit of a light satin through the sort of core of the Sanmai. Got a bit more of the core exposed on this side. Now, this is something that I want to talk about here, because I feel like when you do the core on Sanmai, you know, you can finish it with a satin, you can do a mirror polish. There's a few different things that you can do. I just feel like the satin wasn't quite to the caliber that you might expect from a Miike Nguyen blade. Now, this just might be, it's a bit more of a working finish, I suppose you could say, so this might end up being a personal preference kind of thing. But I don't know, it just doesn't quite seem like all of those satin lines are necessarily the exact same direction. And I don't know, I feel like when you get into these really high-end exotic builds, I think I'd like to see the mirror polish down there as opposed to the satin. But again, it's not my knife, so my opinion's not worth much. Now, if we talk about the action on this knife, super consistent. We have sort of a medium strength detent. It's certainly not a strong detent, but it's to call it light would be an injustice. I definitely feel like medium strength, if ever could be said, it could be said on this knife. And you can see that the blade does drop shut under its own weight. Very smooth. I know that Mike Nguyen is proud of his actions, and it's something that he strives for on his knives, and it definitely shows. One interesting thing that I noticed about this knife, and I'll give you a moment to see if you notice it as well looking from this angle. There is no relief cut in this lock bar. You can see here, it's not hidden. It's not like tucked away back there. There's no secret cutaway. There just is no relief cut. It's quite interesting. You can I don't know if you can see very well. I don't know how bright this light is. Okay. The cut for the lock bar itself comes really far down. So if you can see that dot in there you go, right there, you can see where the line ends. That's almost all the way to the end of the frame. I mean, it's right about here. So I find that interesting. I wonder if he's just found that with a really long lock bar like that, if a relief cut isn't as necessary. It kind of adds a really cool symmetry to the knife that I've never seen on a liner lock before. You know, I've spoken in many videos in the past about how I really appreciate artistic approaches to the relief cut, you know, whether you do an interesting flute or a triple flute or any sort of shaping to it whatsoever, really, that makes it unique. That's something I always enjoy. So to see a knife that simply doesn't have one at all, it's kind of interesting. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't really pay that much attention these days. I just have assumed every knife sort of has a relief cut, and so I don't really look for it. And so when I noticed that it wasn't on this knife, I sort of got nervous and was like, how many knives have I not noticed that there's no relief cut on? But I thought that was interesting, so I felt like I should bring it up. Now, another thing that I want to say about this knife, because, you know, these knives are not cheap. And when I met Mike Nguyen for the first time, it was at Blade Show 2017, and he sort of expressed to the general public that he didn't even make custom knives anymore, period. Now, of course, that's not really true. He just has a really long backlog, and, you know, the people that he makes custom knives for, he kind of just does his own thing. And so it's pretty easy to just say, I don't make custom knives, really, and just to end that conversation there. But the reality is that he does, and he's still building these things. And with that, with the you know, high demand for the knives and everything, you know, comes a hefty price. And we don't need to get too much into the exact pricing of this particular knife, but, you know, we're talking a few $1,000s. And when you're talking about a few $1,000s for a knife, or for any other, you know, sort of luxury good or whatever, you know, you really want your money to be worthwhile. And the thing that I noticed immediately about this knife is something that I'm having a difficult time actually putting my finger on or describing, but I can tell you what it is very clearly, which is that I feel like this knife, more than many knives that I've handled, is a true heirloom knife. And what I mean by that is, you know, anytime a maker says that they make knives because, you know, they think it's so cool that, you know, a guy might buy a knife and then pass it down to his kids or whatever. And I can appreciate that sentiment. And if you're talking about fixed blades and stuff, that's great. But when you're talking about a lot of these high-end tactical folders that are out there these days, you know, I'm not really sure these things are going to last all that long. I've had a couple knives just for a couple of years, and I don't use them that hard. And, you know, I flip them a bit. They don't sit in a box, but, you know, they certainly don't get beaten on, and, you know, little things start to fall apart, and it's, I always second guess when I hear that somebody's talking about an heirloom knife, something that they're actually going to keep and pass down maybe over the course of 20 or 40 years when it's not a fixed blade, because there's, especially a bearing knife, you know, there's just so much that can go wrong, and that you could need to take it apart for, and, you know, something could happen to your lock bar, whatever. There's just so many different things, and so when I hold on to folders, I always sort of think about that and just sort of like, this is cool, but will it be cool in 5 years? Will it be cool in 10 years? And the thing about this knife is that everything about it has a sturdiness and a permanence to it, and just I don't know, a certain level of perfection, even just with the meeting of the materials. So each scale where it meets this titanium frame and where it meets the backspacer, for some reason that little metal sandwich just feels tighter and more flawless on this knife than any other knife I've handled before. And again, it's difficult to describe why I feel that way, but I can't stress enough that I get the sense that, you know, you could actually put this knife in your pocket, you know, maybe if not every day, you know, you could use it all the time pretty much, and you could give this to a kid and or your child, I should say. Hopefully not just like, don't hand this to a 4-year-old, but you know, you could pass this down, and I honestly think it would last. And I don't know, I just felt like I had to say it, even though I couldn't do a good job of justifying why I was saying it. But something about this, just, I feel like I could flip it for the next 100 years and it would never stop flipping like this. It's just, I don't know, it just feels solid as hell. So big thanks to Russell for sending this knife along. It was really cool to check this knife out. Not a lot of people really get to play with the Ghostblades, and you know, they're pretty hard to get your hands on these days. So I'm really thankful for him sending this knife along. It was really cool to discover some things on this knife that, again, I haven't really experienced before. You know, the lack of a relief cut, and just that overall sense of just like, I actually believe that if you told me you were going to pass this down, that the knife would last long enough for you to be able to do that, without it having to be sent back to Miike, without you having to disassemble it yourself. I mean, obviously, if you get sand in the pivot, you're fucked. You have to take it apart. But you know, aside from that, like, I feel like this thing is solid as a rock. So thank you all so much for watching. Of course, if you'd like to see beautiful pictures of this knife, you can follow me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And if you'd like to reach out to me for any reason whatsoever, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.